If you see a pile of mysterious goo, you're better off running the other way. You never know if it's secretly one of the Clintar, which is a species of extraterrestrial symbiotes that run amok in Marvel's world. These guys can be serious trouble for all who cross their path, so always be on the lookout. Today's video is breaking down all of the main Marvel symbiotes that have plagued heroes and villains alike throughout the years. We'll be talking about who they are, where you've seen them, and just how they can ruin your life forever. So let's get into it right now. First up, we can't really start breaking down the symbiotes until we know where they truly came from. And if you thought all these symbiotes didn't have a crazy origin story, think again. Their beginnings trace all the way back to before the universe started. And if you trace that twisted web of pain and suffering, you'll find Null standing above them all in terrifying glory. Null is an ancient evil deity who existed before the universe itself. This dude loves the dark and was perfectly happy floating forever in pitch blackness. So when that pesky thing called creation started, he wasn't very happy, which set off a chain of events resulting in him forming an artificial planet which came to be known as Clintar, or Planet of the Symbiotes. After using the symbiotes as weapons to attempt to conquer the galaxy and send everything back to darkness, the symbiotes rebelled against their god and imprisoned him. Null is all bad news, but he's also kinda awesome. I mean, he created a sword of living darkness known as the All Black, and used it to decapitate a celestial. Credit where credit is due, that's pretty rad. When you think of Venom, you probably immediately think of one thing: the iconic Topher Grace performance in Spider-Man 3? No? Okay, just kidding about that. But isn't it pretty crazy that both Topher Grace and Tom Hardy have played the same role?
Right, okay, Bob.
Venom is far and away the most famous symbiote, but a lot of people actually don't know his comic history. Introduced first in the comics, Venom has a fascinating backstory. After taking a major part in the Kree-Skrull War, the symbiote found its way to Earth, where it bonded with its first human. And it's not who you think. Did you know that Deadpool was the first human Venom bonded with? But almost immediately, Deadpool disengaged, worried that his insanity would alter it. Minutes later, Spider-Man found it, and the rest is history. Powers-wise, Venom can do a lot of what Spider-Man can do, only better. He can stick to surfaces and has almost endless supply of organic webbing. Although he started as one of Spider-Man's biggest foes, the Venom symbiote has morphed into recent years to be more of an anti-hero. Now, minus the scary teeth and weird tongue, he's quite lovable, and certainly doesn't need as many brains anymore. When the Venom symbiote attached to Eddie Brock, everyone thought it was the worst possible thing. But then we were introduced to Cletus Cassidy, and everything got so much worse. Eddie was a villain, sure, but Cletus was evil incarnate. A monster with crimes too graphic to explain here in case my grandma's watching. Hi, Grandma. In the comics, while Eddie is in jail, the Venom symbiote comes off and rescues his BFF. Eddie is cellmates with Cletus, and after the escape, a little bit of the symbiote is left behind, merging with Cletus and becoming the supervillain Carnage. Now that's a simple explanation, but the comics go way more in depth with how Carnage was created. You see, in the comics, Venom believed itself to be the 998th generation of its lineage. And right about the time when Venom saved Eddie, the symbiote was due to birth another generation, and thus Carnage was born. So if you think about it, Venom is sort of Carnage's father. That's a weird thought. Let's push that away, shall we? The interesting thing about Carnage is that it's actually bonded to Cletus's blood, making it extremely difficult to separate the two. This next symbiote is a real Scream. Like literally, her name is Scream. This symbiote was created when scientists at the Life Foundation had the brilliant idea to try to create a superpowered security force. Always a good idea, right? Anyway, these scientists managed to kidnap Venom and remove some of his seeds. Then they used these seeds and stuck them inside a few of their trusted employees, one of which was Donna Diego, a security guard with a history of psychotic episodes. Now you can imagine that mixing a symbiote with someone like Donna didn't go too well, and thus Scream was born, causing all sorts of trouble and damage. Powers-wise, she's very similar to Venom. It just took her longer to learn to control her abilities. Overall, she has the standard super strength, super stamina, wall crawling, as well as a few nifty camouflage capabilities. The really interesting thing about Scream is that the symbiote prefers to use hair-like tendrils to attack foes, because come on, that just looks way cooler than what everyone else can do, right? Remember how I said Venom was the 998th of his lineage and Carnage was the 999th? Well, that means you know the next one up is Lucky 1000. And you just know that spells bad news. The 1000th of anything is never a good thing. And this symbiote is particularly nasty individual. It's Toxin. Toxin was so strong and dangerous that both Venom and Carnage feared him. Can you believe that? If those two heavyweights are afraid of anything, then the whole world should be afraid, and Toxin definitely lived up to his reputation. After Toxin bonded with a police officer, Pat Mulligan, who tried to teach the new symbiote how to deal proper justice. But eventually Toxin was forced to bond with another individual, Eddie Brock, and things got much messier. When the symbiote was with Pat, it had all the normal symbiote powers, only far superior in every way to Venom and Carnage. But once it merged with Eddie, things were taken to the next level, and Toxin really lived up to his name. Probably the coolest new feature Toxin got after bonding with Eddie was the poisonous fangs, which packed one heck of a bite. There are some truly unique symbiotes in the Marvel Universe, but one of the most interesting is Hybrid. The crazy thing about Hybrid is that it's not just one symbiote, it's 4. I mentioned earlier how Scream was made when the Life Foundation injected 5 symbiotes into 5 employees. Scream disposed of the other 4 hosts, leaving the 4 symbiotes known as Riot, Phage, Lasher, and Agony all alone. In a bizarre twist, the 4 of them combined into a single symbiote entity known as Hybrid, and fused themselves with a security guard who had once helped them escape from containment. Their host name is Scott Washington, a guard who had lost the ability to walk. Once Hybrid fused with him, he regained that ability again. The only downside was that now he had 4 different voices/personalities in his head talking to him. That would be enough to drive even Deadpool a little more nuts. But in a refreshing change of pace, Hybrid is usually the one who talks Scott out of doing something violent or rash, making for a very interesting relationship. Mavis Trent has got one of the coolest sounding secret agent names. Doesn't it just roll off the tongue like James Bond and Jason Bourne? Hi, I'm Mavis Trent, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah, we definitely dig it. But although Mavis may be a secret agent by day, she also has a double life with her symbiote, which uses the codename Payback. And we just got to say she looks a lot better than most of these other symbiotes. Sure, she's deadly, but we'd much rather to face her than the terrifying grotesque Venom or Carnage. She looks different from the other symbiotes, as she's able to transform into a silver-skinned energy form. Powers-wise, she works a little differently than the others. She has increased agility, speed, and durability, as well as rapid healing factor. Unlike the other symbiotes, she can also fly as well as generate electricity. What also sets Payback apart is that she only activates when its host is in a state of total bliss. So if Mavis is stressed out and panicked, she's out of luck when it comes to relying on her symbiote. I've talked about Hybrid, which is 4 symbiotes fused as one, but now it's time to delve into each one of its unique parts, because all of them are interesting in their own special way. First up is the symbiote that sounds most likely to be the frontman for a metal band, Lasher. So when the Life Foundation forcibly extracted this symbiote seed from Venom and hatched it, Lasher was still too young to properly control a host of its own. So it fused with security force officer Raymond Hernandez. The two would go on to work alongside the other 4 symbiotes as the Foundation's Guardian symbiotes. But unfortunately, things didn't last long for Lasher. While the Guardians were fighting Venom and Spider-Man, Venom used a metabolic accelerator that sped up the enemy's symbiotes' aging process, turning them all to dust and seemingly ending both the symbiotes and their hosts. Of course, that wasn't the end of things, as Lasher came back eventually and formed Hybrid. As you can guess, Lasher liked lashing out at enemies. He created tentacles on his back that would cause a lot of damage to all who crossed him. If you look at the mission statement for the Life Foundation, you can understand why they were so adamant about creating a special task force of symbiotes. The Life Foundation overall was determined to prepare for MAD, or mutually assured destruction, and was looking for a way to protect their wealthy clients after the inevitable nuclear holocaust. That's right. So if you were a millionaire who wanted to survive in the world after bombs dropped everywhere, you would hire the Life Foundation's advanced security team to protect you. Yeah, it seems really flawed in practice, but it makes the Foundation only choose the best of the best when it comes to deciding on who would be given symbiote seeds. One of those individuals was Leslie Gesnaria, who was fused with the symbiote known as Agony. If you like the color purple, well, Agony is probably your favorite symbiote, because her character design looks like the wild berry Skittles bag. Each one of these Life Foundation symbiotes have a few unique abilities, and Agony's skill is that she can not only spit acid, but can absorb certain chemicals. Next up on the list of symbiotes who the Life Foundation forced into existence is Phage. Originally, this symbiote bonded with the skilled mercenary Karl Mach, who thought of himself as the leader of the group of symbiotes. Everybody sort of realized that Scream was the actual leader, but they more or less let Karl think he was in charge. Attaboy, Karl. And that's the attitude that probably made Karl not long for this world. Scream eventually dispatched Karl and the symbiote was left without a proper host, which of course led to the 4 symbiotes joining together to become Hybrid. In terms of powers and abilities, Phage actually has a lot in common with his de facto brother, Carnage. Carnage has the nasty tendency to form his tendrils into weapons to really slice up his opponents, and Phage can do something similar. The symbiote could create those long, serrated blades that were a serious nuisance to anyone fighting him. But that's not the only thing that made him special. If Phage wanted to, he could throw parts of himself at his enemies, which would be highly acidic and could melt through skin, metal, and other objects. Last but certainly not least with these Life Foundation symbiotes is Riot. Now, I've gone through and explained everything about the Life Foundation and these 5 special symbiotes, so I'm going to pivot a little bit with this last one. In the comics, Riot follows the same path as his brothers and sisters, but in live action, things are a little different. If you're watching this video, chances are you've seen Venom. You know the big bad of the movie turns out to be Carlton Drake, the leader of the Life Foundation. By the end of the movie, Drake gets a symbiote of his own, and what follows is a full-on slugfest between Venom and Drake's symbiote Riot. His powers are quite terrifying. As in the film, he jumps around from host to host, taking full control of their bodies. Weapons-wise, the movie version of Riot is able to construct blades, spikes, flails, and claws that he can choose to shoot as projectiles if he wanted to. Yeah, it's a really good thing Eddie and Venom got rid of this symbiote because he was total bad news. Like a turd in the wind. If you're a fan of more tech-based characters, then chances are you might find Scorn the most appealing. Let me explain. After saving Cletus Cassidy from Earth's orbit, industrialist Michael Hall used Carnage to create a new type of technology, a prosthetic arm that utilized a biomechanical computer chip that used the symbiote's constituent matter as circulatory, that allowed it to react to the user's thoughts. This prosthetic arm was given to psychiatrist Dr. Tanis Neves, who lost her right arm in a shootout. But the symbiote matter inside the prosthetic arm caused her to have nightmarish hallucinations, which sounds like a horrible price to pay. Eventually, Carnage came around and bonded with Neves for a short time, but when it left, it deposited its new spawn into Neves' arm. This spawn would be known as Scorn. Being tech-based, Scorn has an interesting array of powers, including being able to fuse itself with different types of weapons, data manipulation, can communicate with all forms of technology, and even change herself into any sort of machinery that she holds or touches. Besides the rocky beginning, Scorn actually sounds like a really cool symbiote. It's easy to think that we live in a bubble here on Earth, but the universe is a big place. In the Marvel Universe, just because there's a lot of symbiotes here on the planet doesn't mean they don't travel elsewhere. The best example of this is the symbiote with the most interesting name on the list, ZZZXX. This symbiote became to be known as a unique symbiote mutation, mainly because it prefers to feed on its host's brains rather than adrenaline. That makes the symbiote we want to encounter the least out of any of them. We can handle space goo forming around and controlling our bodies, but feeding on our brains, well, that's where we draw the line. ZZZXX was discovered by the Shi'ar race, who pulled an already boneheaded move in its quest to understand the symbiote. It was generally decided that this new strange symbiote was one of the most dangerous criminals of the Shi'ar Empire had ever captured before. And that gave them the bright idea to put ZZZXX into an Imperial Guard. We know the saying is keep your friends close and your enemies closer, but that's a little ridiculous. The big lesson with the Mania symbiote is that you can't force a true connection no matter how hard you try. We don't know what it is about corporations, but for some reason they keep looking at these symbiotes and want to create new stuff out of them. It never works, guys, just drop it. That's what happened when the Ararat Corporation took a piece of Venom's tongue and cloned it and experimented on it until they made a new symbiote called Mania. At least this group was straightforward with its goals. It simply wanted to wipe out all life on Earth. But they had a serious problem with this new symbiote. It wouldn't bond with anyone. All the people that the Ararat Corporation put in front of it, Mania would just sadistically eliminate because it enjoyed it. Finally, the suits in charge tried something drastic. They gave Mania 2 options at once, an elderly mental patient and a prison inmate. The prison inmate was able to fight it off, but Mania ended up fusing with the elderly mental patient before doing horrible things to the prisoner. Yeah, Mania doesn't sound like a lot of fun to be around. Moving on. Eddie Brock will forever be linked to Venom, but in the comics, another surprising character actually bonded with the symbiote for a long time, and that was none other than Flash Thompson. Yes, the same Flash Thompson that gave Peter Parker wedgies after class in high school. When Flash bonded with Venom, he became a soldier for the government and operated as Agent Venom. Eventually, he and Eddie Brock had a major showdown, with the Venom symbiote not entirely sure who it wanted to stay bonded with, and ended up latching onto both men at the same time. Talk about an awkward love triangle. Spider-Man arrived on scene and splashed the symbiote with anti-venom serum in an attempt to stop it. Instead of wiping it out, it caused Flash to become anti-venom, which was just a color-inverted version of his Agent Venom form. After this transformation, Flash could no longer bond with the original Venom symbiote. First a love triangle and then a sad breakup. It's like a romantic comedy with superheroes. Now if only we could somehow get the MCU's version of Flash infected with a Venom symbiote. Out of all the symbiotes, we think Scorn is definitely the coolest. What I wouldn't give for a new techno arm. What about you guys? What was your favorite symbiote and why? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to hit that subscribe button once you're done for more awesome Marvel content just like this. Thanks for watching!